Well, hey everyone, Rose here. It's been a hot second. I had honestly planned on doing this video back in early May. It is not early May anymore. Motivation has been a very fickle friend, as I'm sure a lot of you can probably definitely relate. Even, this is really random to say, but even my YouTube watching habits has been just completely off whack. I am so far behind on anything to deal with BookTube, so it's not a line when I say, it's not you, it's me. So while generally things have been kind of off their rhythm, overall I would say that I'm doing okay. Okay, I think I should just get to the actual point of this video. Yay, let's do this. Okay, this is oh my god, hold on, sorry, hair, I feel hair. I mean, obviously there's hair everywhere, but there's a loose hair. This video it's a triple whammy. It is a reading wrap up of the months of March, April, and May. Now, while I have been reading an absolute ton, I would say a good 99% of all of the reading that I have been doing has been nothing but fan fiction. Listen, fan fiction in these times has been my happy place. It's how I've been coping, so I have zero regrets. In all of these readings, I finished a grand total of 2 comics in the month of March. If you only care to hear about the physical books that I read, or in this case, the physical comics that I read, I understand that is totally fine. So that is exactly what I will begin with. The rest of the reading has just been nothing but fan fiction, as far as the eye can see. Welcome to this video. The first comic that I read to kick off the month of March was the Darth Vader comic. This is by Soule, written by Soule. Right up there. Anywho's, do I remember how to do any of this stuff? Sort of. I honestly covered a lot of my thoughts on this particular comic in the video Reading Happened in this weekly reading vlog. I think that's the title of that one, linked up here and down below. So I'm gonna keep my thoughts pretty short. I enjoyed this. This story comic is pretty much about Darth Vader becoming Darth Vader. There are some tests that he has to pass, and he does. His marks for dedication are just off the charts, I can tell you that. The art is absolutely gorgeous in this comic. It helps tell the story in an interesting way. I will say that I kind of wish there were either a few more panels, possibly a few more pages in total to add to the story, because there were just a few or a couple scenes that I felt could have added just a touch more story, a touch more information, but overall, it's still a good story. It's concise. Yay for that. And the last thing I really have of any significance I have to say about it is I do want to continue reading in the Darth Vader comic series. So good job, people. Good job. The second comic that I read, also Star Wars, is Thrawn, and this is based off of the 2017 Thrawn novel by Timothy, is it Zahn? Is that how you pronounce his name? I think it's Zahn. Anywho's, so I think the writer adapter, that makes sense, is Hauser. Yeah? Okay. I discussed, I think, most of my thoughts in the same video as the video that I chatted about Darth Vader. Yeah, so again, I'm going to keep this pretty short and sweet. I still prefer the story of Thrawn in this particular medium because it gives you all of the important points that you need to know. And also this way, I do not have to spend nearly as much time with the character Arinda Price or have to be in her head. And frankly, the same can be said for the character Eli. Didn't have as much beef against Eli, but Eli was kind of a whatever character to me, so yay for that. Also, the art in here is gorgeous as well, and there were definitely some pieces that were just really clever. And what I mean by that is I remember there were some scenes in the novel that I had a harder time just seeing in my mind's eye of what the heck was going on in a particular scene. And this answers that, so good on you, artists, Ross and Woodard, yep, all of you, great job, great job. Is that all I have to say? I think that's all I really have to say. I like the comic. I like it a bit more than I do than the novel. Although, I do still want to continue reading the Thrawn books. So, there's that. And that is legit a wrap on anything physical that I read. So, if that's all that if that was the only thing that you were interested in watching, that's totally fine. And you don't really want to hear me yammer on for a while about fan fiction, that's totally okay. Thank you for watching up to this point of the video. And yeah, that was me diving into fan fiction stuff. Cool. If I were to attempt to cover everything that I read in the 3 months dealing with fan fiction, we'd be here all freaking day, possibly two. It's a lot. So instead, I put together some stats, which I feel like people in the booktube community, you love some stats, you love some graphs. I didn't quite do graphs, but you'll see what I mean. Anywho's, and then after that, I will talk about a select few stories. Yeah, to keep things sane, pretty much. But first, before that, some sexy numbers. Now, these are not exact because I was too lazy and I just didn't think about keeping track of these numbers while I was doing this reading, so I did my best to go back and figure that out, so it's close estimates. Okay, the number of fanfiction stories I read in the month of March, and just keep in mind that some of the shortest stories that I read were about 1,000 words, and it ranges all the way up to about 24,000 words. Ahem. The stories I read, 36. Out of the 36, I DNF'd 2 of them. Out of the 36 stories, 9 of them were new stories and 25 of them were rereads. It's a habit of mine. All of these stories were from 6 different fandoms, and I read the most from the Teen Wolf fandom. And the total number of words that I read, again an estimate, is about 256,147 words. Pew, pew. Now, out of all of that, I only want to recommend one fanfiction author. She is called Mickey Mouse. Not that particular Mickey Mouse. Now, Mickey Mouse, she has written in several fandoms, but the fandoms that I read the most from her is from the fandoms Teen Wolf, Voltron Legendary Defender, and Castlevania. Right now, I want to place specific emphasis, that's the word I'm looking for, emphasis on her Castlevania work. I just flippin' love her writing for this fandom. I would swear that she is secretly a writer for this show because she's so good at capturing Trevor's filthy mouth just hilariously well, but also the fact that he's really a softie inside. She's also fantastic at capturing the complexity of Alucard's personality very well, and just the banter between Trevor and Alucard, it's especially entertaining. I love it. Now, up to this point, she has written 7 short stories for this fandom, and this is me recommending all of you to check out all of them. And of course, all of the authors and the work that I mentioned, it's all going to be linked down below because I'm here for you. Now, moving on to the months of April and May. Both of those months were just absolutely overflowing with stories specifically centered on Steve and Bucky, aka the characters from Captain America. Yeah. I already talked about 3 specific stories dealing with Steve and Bucky in my April video called What I'm Currently Reading, linked up here and down below. Those 3 particular stories, they were factored into the stats. And also, this is me just mentioning this so you can also go check out those particular stories. Whew, I'm doing so well at this. I lost my train of thought, and I'm back on track. The number of fanfiction stories that I read in April, keeping in mind that the shortest one was about 500 words, and that ranges all the way up to about 173,000 words. Woof! The number of stories that I read was 115. Although I did DNF 5 of those stories, Out of those 115 stories, 74 of them were new and 36 of them were rereads, so there's an improvement in the rereads in the new section. Out of all of these stories, they came from 5 different fandoms, and I read the most from the Captain America fandom. In second place was the Check Please fandom, but a majority of them was just Captain America. Now, the total number of words that I read in the month of April, and oof, this deserves a drum roll, please. 966,222 words. To put that into perspective, that is like me reading the first 6 books in the Harry Potter series and about 40% of the 7th book. Yeah, fun fact. The entire Harry Potter series, the number of words in that series is 1,084,170 words. Moving on to my stats for the month of May. Yep. Nailing this. Okay. The number of fanfiction stories that I read in May, keeping in mind that the shortest one this time was 300 words, so it's a baby one for baby. And that goes all the way up to stories that are about 58,500 words. Oh, quick side note. I stopped my calculations for the month of May on the 26th, so it's not 100% accurate, but it's close enough. It's fine. It's fine. Numbers are going up, folks. I read a total of 124 stories. I DNF'd 6 of them. Out of the 124 stories, 101 were new, and 16 of them were rereads. Now, out of all of these, the number of fandoms went down. I only read in 4 different fandoms, and you guessed it, I read the most in the Captain America fandom, and the number of words that I read, 1,140,276 words. Okay, out of all of that, I want to recommend 2 authors and 5 stories to keep things reasonable, manageable, and thanks to this impressive reading binge, I discovered 2 new favorite authors, and by this point, I have read practically all of their work. No regrets. The first author that I want to talk about is Obsessive Reader, and I have 4 main points to point out about this author. The first one is she doesn't drag out the angst in her stories, which I just super appreciate. Second point, she has range. She can write really silly, fluffy pieces and then turn around and write much heavier stories, so cool. That's really good. Even if... well, hold please. Talking too much. Where was I? Right, number 3. She Nope. Bonk. Number 3, she captures the bond between Steve and Bucky really well, even when the story starts out with them not knowing each other. And number 4, I don't really have a fantastic way to describe this, but I love how she writes the dialogue for Steve and Bucky. Simple as that. Okay, so the second author and a new favorite author is Leverage Hunters, in parentheses, Monkey Green. I have 5 points to say about this particular author. If you love fantasy, if you love magic, if you love mythical creatures, this author, she's got you. She has so many stories with these elements, and she's just so dang creative with these genres and these details in particular. I can't tell you how many times I came across a story, and I'm just like, how do you come up with these concepts? Point number 2. The author is also just really great at writing both lighthearted stories and then flipping around and writing much heavier stories that will make you cry. Point number 3. She has written a good handful of stories where one or more of her characters are on the ace spectrum, so love that kind of representation. Awesome. Point number 4. This is the same as Obsessive Reader. She just has a really good knack for capturing the bond between Steve and Bucky. I just love it. I appreciate it. And the 5th point is, for me at least, she is the type of writer that in several of her stories, when I get to the end, it always leaves me wanting a little bit more to that story, or just wanting to know more about the world building that she created and like the lore that's within the story, if that makes sense. I just really like when I come across authors that have that kind of writing that just really pulls me in and I just want to know more. And okay, that's it on that point. So let's go finally move on to the 5 stories that I am about to share with you. This is going so good. The first story is called Bleached Bones and Fallen Snow by Leverage Hunters. This story is just under 17,000 words, and it is a Winter Soldier AU where Steve is Death. Now let me clarify on that, because I feel like there are probably a multitude of stories that have just different variations of what death is and what death represents. Basically, the role of death in this story is to send the people's spirits into what each individual person thinks is going to be their afterlife. So therefore, death, he doesn't choose like where they go. He is just the guide. Does that make sense? I hope so. Now, without giving away too much, Steve has been Death for a very long time, and eventually he comes across Bucky, and he is intrigued by Bucky, and oh, definitely trust me, this is not your typical boy meets boy kind of romance. It's very unique. This isn't even like a particularly long story, but more than once I got a little teary-eyed. I don't know if this is really like silly to point out because Steve is Death in this, but there's just something very otherworldly about this story, and the writing in general is just very atmospheric, and it's a very moving story, and I cannot recommend this enough. Go read it. The next unique story is by the same author. This story is called Black Dog. This is one of the stories from this author where I'm just like, your mind. It's amazing. This story is just over 55,000 words. Oh, it's just so cool and it's so unique. Several characters like Hemdall and Clint and Natasha and Sam, they do appear in the story to varying degrees, and I'm not sure how else to explain this, but how the author incorporates details of their characters from the MCU into this particular story, it's just so clever. If you read the story, that will make sense. This story, it's a modern AU alternate universe where Bucky, he is a writer, and Steve, I don't really want to give Steve's story away, so I'm going to be vague here, and this is not a spoiler because these particular details are in the summary of the story and in the tags. Steve, he is a ghost, and he is a guardian of sorts. I felt that the author just did a really good job of capturing everyone's voices, whether they were minor or major characters. The pacing was done really well, particularly with the build-up between Steve and Bucky and their relationship. It's a beautiful story, and check it out. Okay. The third story I want to recommend is called Miles to Go Before I Sleep by Obsessive Reader. Now this story, it is just over 34,000 words, and it's very much an ode to those cheesy 1980s action movies, and this one is specifically a Rambo AU, an interpretation of that particular, I think just the first movie, because I think there's more than one, isn't there? I've never seen them. Yeah. Anywho, so in this story, Bucky, he is a Vietnam veteran, and there were some scenes where it was hard to read because of just how poorly Bucky is treated for being a veteran. Steve in the story, he is an artist, and he is renting a cabin in the wilderness. I think that's the correct term for it. He's renting a cabin at the right place at the right time, and within the story, I thought that the action was done well because I was able to follow along. I was able to picture what was happening, so good job on that. Coming back to Steve, for him, just so you know, Steve is the size of pre-serum Steve, and frankly, it's no matter what size Steve is, but I feel like especially when he's his smaller self, he is just such a force to be reckoned with, and that is very true in this particular story. And just overall, the story, it has action, it has drama, it has romance. I don't know, it's a good combination, and read it. Cool. Moving on. The fourth story is called Stop Dragging My Heart Around. Love those puns. This one is by Leverage Hunters. So in this story, there be dragons, and I freaking love when dragons are in stories. I swear dragons just make any kind of story about 10 times more interesting. It's just science at this point. This particular story, it's nice, it's compact, it is just over 15,000 words. The world building and the lore weaved into the story, it intrigued me. I wanted to know more, so good on you, author, for that part. Now, the dragons in this story, they are a type of shapeshifter because they are able to take on human shapes, which is pretty dope. And the story is set in a pseudo medieval time where Bucky, he is on his own and he is struggling to make money, to make ends meet, and whether by chance or luck, he comes into possession of a dragon egg. And Steve in this story, who is a dragon, Steve is also after the same egg. Why? Read this adventurous story and find out. Lordy, was that the only thing that I could say? I don't know. It's a story about dragons. Where can you go wrong with that? It's great. So, moving on to the last story that I want to recommend. This one is called The Shops on Mourning Street by Mickey Mouse. Yes, this one is in the Castlevania fandom, and yes, while I said read all her stuff, I figured it was only polite that I at least talk about one of them. Yeah, that makes sense, so this is me doing that. This is a quick read. It is just shy of being about 7,000 words. It takes place in modern times, which I always find fun, especially when the source material takes place originally in some sort of fantasy world or just thousands of years ago. Yeah? Okay, slightly getting off track. This story, it's pretty light, it's pretty fluffy. It pretty much boils down to Trevor and Alucard in this kind of competition of politeness. It's kind of like, I can't believe this guy is doing something nice for me. That means I'm gonna have to do something nice back. Well, fine, here you go. That's literally the story. It's charming. Dang it. Trevor in particular, he's very peculiar in how he flirts in this story, but don't worry, Alucard he's still charmed by it. As I mentioned, it's a light and fluffy read, and there is some deeper aspects to it if you're paying attention. And the last thing I really have to say is that I just really love the inner thoughts of Trevor. They're hilarious. Okay. And yeah, that is a wrap on what I've been up to, what I've been reading in the past 3 months. I have hopes. I don't really have high hopes, but I have some hopes that I will read an actual physical book in the month of June. We shall see. What have you all been gravitating towards in the last 3 months? Have you all been reading more, less, or the same amount? Let me know in the comments down below. And as far as future videos go, I am 90-something% certain that the next video will be my third and final installment on my Japan trip mini series thing. Yeah, hooray for that. Yeah, that is it until next time. Thank you all so much for watching. Please take care, everyone. When you go outside, please wear a mask, continue to do physical distancing, wash your hands. It is so important. Thanks again for watching. Bye.